Well, elsewhere, 76 Conservative MPs have signed a cross-party letter urging the Prime Minister to introduce an energy cap. That was a manifesto pledge, but it was later watered down. And the man behind that letter is the former Conservative Minister John Penrose, who's with me now in the studio. Thank you very much for coming in. What did you say in the letter? What is it you want the Prime Minister to do?
Well, what we're saying is that there are 192 MPs who signed this thing, and we're saying it's in 3 election manifestos: the Conservative manifesto, the Labour manifesto and the SNP manifesto. And the problem which we've got at the moment is that Ofgem, who've actually got, they're the regulator, they've got the powers to do this, but they seem unwilling to use them, or they only want to use them in a very limited way. There are 17 million households who are currently paying too much for their energy bills, according to the official figures. Ofgem want to help about 2 million. That's fine, but it's far too little. And we're overpaying by about £1.7 billion a year, so it's really big money for you and I and a lot of your viewers. And if they won't act, then Parliament needs to push hard and do it. And what this is supposed to say is there's 192 MPs who will vote for this on a cross-party basis.
And it sounds like if you've got that cross-party support, you could probably force the government to do something with the sheer parliamentary numbers. Now, you say Ofgem are dragging their feet. They make the case, don't they, that actually introducing a price cap is such a dramatic thing to do. It should be done by elected politicians, not by an appointed regulator. And they want the government to take the lead on this. They don't think they should have to do it.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have much sympathy with that, because what they're asking is for Parliament to pass a law requiring Ofgem to use use powers which Parliament has already passed a law to give them. And that seems kind of circular. We've already made this decision once. We said it's up to you guys. You have the legal powers. Parliament voted for it way back when. And they're saying, oh no, we want you to wrap it up in a big pink bow before we'll actually do anything. And I just think that's weak-willed.
The arguments over an energy cap aren't straightforward, and the Tory party's changed its mind quite dramatically about it. I mean, Ed Miliband was labelled a Marxist by David Cameron when he suggested something really quite similar to what you're asking for now.
There are different kinds of cap, and certainly for a sort of relatively flinty free marketeer like myself, what I'm arguing for, and actually what other energy companies, the non-big 6, the challenger firms who are trying to sort of introduce a bit of reality and normality into this market, what they're arguing for too, is something a bit different from the Ed Miliband version, and it's a sort of a maximum markup. It's called a relative cap, and all it means is that the competitive bit of the market, which is the bit that you and I get if we choose to switch our energy supplier, that's got good pricing in it. It's sensible. You don't get ripped off in that piece. And so what we're saying is that the default tariff, the rip-off tariff, the one that you and I end up on if we don't switch, can
where
be
most people are.
Where most of us are, absolutely. Most of your viewers, if they don't know what tariff they're on, the chances are they're on the bad one. That tariff can be no more than X%, whatever X is, above the competitive ones. Now that means you can't get ripped off.
Well, that just means they'll put the competitive ones up and then put the standard variable one up above that, and we'll all end up paying
this is the argument that if you do something nasty to me, I'll blow my own brains out. And you know, the big 6 will argue that. I don't think it really holds water, if only because it will be hugely damaging to the big 6's brands if they try and do that. It's a really...
well, unless they all do it together, and there is suspicion, of course, that there is a degree of coordination in the way that the tariff prices are set. And we can't choose not to buy gas and electricity.
And I think if we'd been having this conversation 5 or 10 years ago, before all these other competitors were in the market, there's now 40 other firms, small firms, but they're all there offering decent deals. If we'd had this conversation before then the big 6 might have been able to get away with saying we're going to try and carry on with the rip-off. But now there's all these others, we've all got a choice. And that means that the shoe is on the other foot.
Well, except that you're saying that would work if people choose to go with some of the smaller competitors. The whole problem is that people don't choose to change their supplier. That's why you want action on the standard variable tariff. So unless you actually enthuse most people to go and take action, there still won't be competition in the market. That's the very problem.
It is part of the problem, but there's a couple of points to make in response to that. I mean, the first bit is that these other 40-odd firms are genuinely making a difference in the competitive piece of the market. So if you link the rip-off piece to the competitive piece, then you and I can't get ripped off too badly if we aren't one of the people who switch. But also, if we are some of the people who switch, we still do better. We still get some sort of a benefit from being active, from being sensible about it. And I think that kind of strikes a balance, while in the longer term, and you're absolutely right to make the point, in the longer term, we've got to have fundamental reform. And actually, this is the bit where Ofgem are starting to do the right thing, credit where it's due. But those changes will take a couple of years to feed through. It's going to take a long time before the customer is king, and that we all think about it in the same way as we think about buying coffee or cornflakes or something else like that. We're a long way away from that. It'll take time.
Any idea what the Prime Minister's thinking on this? It sounds as though you've got a bit of a standoff. You want Ofgem to act, they want the government to take more action. Where are we going to go from here?
Well, I guess this letter is designed to make it easy, so that if we're in the middle of this arm wrestle with Ofgem, as you rightly say, and if Ofgem really won't budge, which I think would be very weak-willed of them, but if they won't, then this is designed to say there's 192 MPs. I know we've got a hung parliament, but this means that you can get something through. The chief whips of all the major parties will be able to say, yep, this ought to work, providing we treat it carefully, and therefore Parliament can act if it has to. Shouldn't have to, but if it has to, then the numbers should be there.
Well, I've still got my guests of the day here. Trevor Kavanagh, do you think this will actually work to bring down our energy prices?
Well, I think that we've argued for a long time that there should be a cap. And I think that our readers particularly feel our readers are some of the poorest in the country. So they are possibly the biggest victims of the energy prices too. There is another factor in this which I think needs to be addressed, which is the carbon tax, which is something that the energy companies leap upon as being...
Oh, they complain bitterly about it and,
Exactly.
and suggest that's why the prices are going up.
Exactly. So I think that is iniquitous anyway, but I think that a cap, some sort of action needs to be taken. I think that this is one of the best ideas at the moment.
And somewhere where the Tories and Labour do seem to agree.
A little bit, yes. I mean, listen, fuel poverty is something that we should not be looking at in one of the richest countries in the world. The fact that people have to choose between food and fuel in this country is completely unacceptable. But this is a complete nightmare for Theresa May. This is Labour policy on her lawn. By the way, you mentioned prices. The Big Six had record profits this year. And by some weird coincidence, it was also the year of massive price hikes on energy prices. So you can see why there is so much anger about this, and you can see why this little tweaking at the edges is not nearly as popular as actually renationalising energy companies, as your poll earlier suggested.